This morning we're going to talk about true love. How many of you guys have been in love? Maybe you still are in love. But I have been in love with many different people, many different things. I am in love with my parents. Not in a romantic way necessarily, but I love them. And I don't know what my life would have been like without them. I love my little sister now. I didn't so much when I was growing up. But these days I could hardly imagine my life without her. I love my wife. I choose to love her and have been married to her for almost 18 years. And you know, every day of those 18 years I've had to choose to love her. It becomes a choice because it's not a romantic emotion. I love my kids unconditionally. When they screw up, I love them. When they do the right thing, I love them. I love my church family. When they screw up, I still love them. And when they do the right thing, I love them. It's amazing how it goes. But every time somebody brings up the phrase, true love, this is what pops into my head. How many of you guys have seen The Princess Bride? One of the best films ever made, in my opinion. It's up there in my top 5 with Star Wars. And this is definitely in my top 5. But when the bishop comes out to marry those guys, his marriage is what brings us together today. And he goes on to say, love, true love. And so I had to find a picture of him put up today. Because this is the picture I get in my head every single time somebody says the phrase true love. And of course, you know, you've got your puppy love, which I firmly believe we have somebody who's in the midst of puppy love. If you remember back in the days of doo-bop and malt shop songs and those kinds of things, there was a famous song called Puppy Love. But we have to look and see, what is love really? What is it? Because we don't know as a society very often what love is. We use the word for everything. Oh, I love this TV show.
Right.
Really? You
Right.
couldn't live without that TV show? What'd you do before it came on? What did you do if it gets canceled? Oh my goodness, my wife is going to die if they ever cancel NCIS.
Probably.
Oh my. And as soon as the show gets canceled, what happens? We find a new show that we just love. I love T-bone steaks. Woo, do I love T-bone steaks. But you know what? If I eat too many of them, they love me and they stick around for a long time. So I've cut down on T-bone steaks. I maybe get one once a year. Because then it's a serious treat for me. But I don't have to have T-bone steak every single day to be there. And doesn't it imply if you love something, it's around you all the time? That you want to be with that, whatever or whomever it is? What is love? Of course, that brings up the question Tina Turner asked so eloquently. What's love got to do with anything? Got to do with it. Got to do with it. Is love just a secondhand emotion? Or is it something that's real? Is it something that's genuine? Is it something that we look at, that we have, that we choose? Let me start with this. There's 3 kinds of love that the Greeks identified. They actually had different words for the different kind of loves. Their first one was eros. And of course, eros is the word for Cupid. You know, that the Romans had Cupid and the Greeks had eros. They were the same God, little g. And he was the God of love and everything that went with it, except that it was the romantic kind of love. The kind that when a guy is standing there and he sees a pretty girl walk by, he goes, ah! And then does one of these when they walk by. Oh, come on, guys. You know you've done it.
I haven't.
It's the same kind of love that when a girl is watching a movie and the hot star takes off his shirt, they're just needing a little bit more forward. Well, what happens when that cute girl gets a little older and maybe puts on some weight or has some wrinkles or their hair goes gray? Or that guy's cut, chiseled body isn't so cut and chiseled anymore and has a few inches of padding over the steel.
Work it out.
What do you do then? Is that love still there?
Yes.
Do you look at that person and go, oh yeah,
Yeah.
every time you see him? I got news for you. Being married for 18 years, that isn't the case. Eros is a fleeting kind of love. It's the lust. It's that feeling of physicality that we want to have with somebody. It's not a real deep emotion. In fact, a lot of times Eros, that physical love, is skin deep.
Right.
Now, it doesn't mean that you don't have Eros for your mate. It doesn't mean you don't have Eros for your significant other. I'm married, and I'm, like I said, for almost 18 years, and I still lust after my wife. Okay? And that's okay, because we're married. It's okay to say that. It's okay to do that. But if that was all our relationship was based on, we wouldn't be married anymore. And then we talk about the second kind of love, the phileo kind of love. And of course, we all know the city in Pennsylvania, the city of brotherly love, is called Philadelphia. And there's a lot of churches around called the Philadelphia Church, because they are the church of love. Brotherly love, the friendship kind of love, the kind of love that we have for each other here at Welcome Home Church quite often. No, I don't need to see you every day, but I miss you if you're not there. I have friends within the congregation, I have friends within our church family, that if they're not part of it, I miss them. I have friends, deep friends, who I have phileo love for, that I don't see all the time.
Chris.
I was just going to tell you the story of my best friend Chris. We met when I was in 6th grade. He was in 4th grade. I moved into a house right next door to the apartment complex he lived in. And we all were there. And believe it or not, I was a large 6th grader. Which I know may be hard for you to believe, that I was a large child. But Chris saw me moving in, and he goes, "Can we play? Can we play football together?" And I said, "Absolutely, I want to play football." He goes, "You're on my team." Well, that's cool. Why do you want me on your team? Because you're bigger than everybody else we play with. Let's go get him.
Yeah.
And then we went and got all of his friends, and he said, "This is Mark. He's on my team." And they all went. No. We played, and Chris and I began a friendship that day. Well, about 6 months into my time living there, Chris moved away, and I didn't see him again. But I remembered those times when we got to play football, and I had other friends, and so I wasn't too derelict of friends, but we moved again. My family tended to do that a lot. And we moved, and wouldn't you know it, 3 doors away, who would be there in my 8th grade year but Chris? And 3 doors away, I'm sitting there, it's like, dude, because this is back in the 80s, so dude, everything was dude and awesome and rad. It's like, "You moved here?" And he's like, "You moved here? This is so cool." And so, of course, the first thing we do is not get out the football, because it was the wrong time of the year. It was spring. So he gets out the baseball. And he goes, "Hey, let's go play baseball out in the street." We're not thinking very bright, because we're adolescents. And he grabs a real baseball and a real bat. He goes, "I'll pitch first and you hit." I was like, "Okay, I'm not very good at hitting, but we'll try it." And if I'd have been thinking, we wouldn't have done this because of 2 reasons. One, there was a house right back there with nice large bay windows in it. And it was just across the street. And 2, we had no protective equipment whatsoever. No cups, no helmets, no nothing. But we were playing with real baseballs and real bats. And sure enough, he pitches a few of them, and I'm swinging and missing. But boy, I tell you what, on that 3rd one, I stepped into it and crack! And I don't know where it went for sure, but I knew I got a hold of it, and it felt good. It was a great big hit. And all of a sudden, I looked where Chris was pitching from, and he is curled up on the ground with his legs crossed. You see where this is going? Doubled over, not breathing. And if you're a guy, you understand exactly what just happened. And if you're a woman, you're probably laughing at the guys that are all got their eyes crossed right about now. And Chris is laying on the ground, and finally I hear The breath comes back to him. What does he do? He screams, "Grandma!" And Grandma, he was living with his grandmother, comes flying out. And she goes, "What happened?" He goes, "I got hit!" And I'm standing there with the bat. And thank goodness my parents were not done moving yet, because from down the street, 3 houses away, I hear, "Mark, it's time to go!" Walk over to Chris, put the bat down, says, "My parents are calling me, I gotta go." His grandmother stared daggers at me. That's how Chris and mine's relationship really began. I hit him in the groin with a baseball.
Awesome.
And to this day, I can call Chris up on my cell phone and say, "Hey, what's going on?" Not say who it is, not have any idea. And he'll be like, "Hey, Mark, it's good to hear from you." Or he'll call me and I won't know who it is necessarily, and I'll answer the phone. He says, "Hey, what's up?" And say, "Hey, Topher, what's going on?" Because that's what I called him, was Topher. Well, guess what? I moved again, but this time I wasn't in the same city. I moved to Missouri. He was still in Portland. I was watching a Blazers game on TV. And it is in Phoenix. It wasn't in Portland. And they're scanning the crowd, and all of a sudden they come to this group of students. And who would be sitting there in Phoenix but Chris? And I called my parents down and said, "You got to see this. Chris is on TV." "What do you mean Chris is on TV? He can't be on TV." I said, "Come here and look." And we looked, and there he was. Sure enough, he'd won a special thing through the NBA Inside Stuff, and he had a big, long video article done on him and a couple other kids that won this. They got to go with the Blazers and to go to Phoenix to watch them pound the Suns. And there was this really cool thing. I'll never forget it. It's like, "Chris, man, what are you doing?" And of course, being 14 at the time, I forgot where I put his phone number, so I couldn't even call him to say, "Man, I saw you on TV." But later that summer, we went back to Portland, and I was just hoping he still lived in the same house. I went pound, pound, pound on the door. And from the inside of the house, what do I hear but, "Who is it?" I said, "It's me. Come on in, Mark." That's all I had to say. That's phileo love, where you have a friend who never forgets about you, who is your friend regardless of how long you're apart. Chris is my son's namesake. That's where Chris got his name. And that's why we spelled his name Topher at the end. Because I always called him Topher growing up. And so we named our son Chris Topher. That's how close Chris and I became. And to this day we can see each other and 30 seconds in, it's like no time has ever passed from the time we saw each other last. That's what Philadelphia love is. Brotherly love. We love each other like we're brothers. But that, in and of itself, is not even the deepest kind of love. The deepest kind of love is agape. Agape is a Greek word that means unconditional, self-sacrificial kind of love. Putting another person before yourself. Putting their needs ahead of your own needs. Moms have this kind of love. Oh my goodness, they got a screaming baby on their arm and it wants fed. Mom's gonna feed the baby. Even though it's 2:30 in the morning and I haven't slept more than 3 hours. Why? Because that baby's needs has superseded their own needs. Fast forward a few years, 8-year-old little boy comes in with a skinned knee. Mom stops what they're doing and does what? Plays doctor and helps the baby out. Unless you're my wife, and then she waits for Dad to get home, puts him on the other side of the room, so you just stay there. Daddy will clean up the blood, or take you to the hospital and get your arm stitched up, or whatever it is. But agape love supersedes all other loves. You do nothing to deserve that kind of love from somebody. God so agape the world. He so loved the world above himself. He so loved the people that he created more than what he had for himself, that he gave up his only son. That whoever believes in him would not die, would not go to hell, would not be extinguished, but would have everlasting life with him in heaven. Agape is the kind of love that takes over what we need, what we want, to put other people's love ahead of them. And I'll tell you right now, that is why I can have a successful marriage. Not because I love spending time with my wife, not because I lust after my wife, although those come with it, but because her needs supersede my own. And my needs supersede her own. And if you think about it, both of our needs are being filled that way, but not by ourselves. They're being fulfilled by someone else. And so we're going to look at this passage. It's become synonymous with marriage, and it's become synonymous with romantic love. But this passage has nothing to do with romance. This passage has nothing to do with your spouse. This passage has everything to do with what agape speaks of, with what that self-sacrificial love means. And so if you'll join me at verse 1, I would appreciate it. If I could speak all the languages of the earth and of the angels, but didn't agape others, I would only be a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I had the gift of prophecy and I understood all of God's secret plans and possessed all the knowledge, and if I had such faith that I could move mountains but did not agape others, I would be nothing. You get that? Even if we can do anything, even if we have the abilities that no one else has, if we don't have love, it means absolutely zero. Who could tell me who was the NFL MVP last year? Because it really mattered, right?
Adrian Peterson.
Okay, Adrian Peterson. Good, so let me know. And this one's going to stick in my craw for a while, but who was the Super Bowl of the... Who won the Super Bowl last year of the NFL?
Ravens.
Yeah, you only know that because you're Niners fans, right? Who won the year before?
Giants. Not my team.
Who was the MVP the year before?
Phoenix.
Who won the year before that?
Oh, my.
Okay, 3 years ago we go and nobody looks around and goes, I don't know who the MVP was. Why did it matter? Does it matter that those guys who are rich and famous and have all of these abilities and can do all this stuff and make people stand up and cheer and go nuts and wave towels and paint their bodies and their faces and everything else? Do these guys really matter in the long run of things? No.
They do.
Because it doesn't matter what abilities we have. It doesn't matter what things we can do. It doesn't matter what we know. Unless we're using them to love other people, put their needs ahead of our own, we don't matter. He goes on in verse 3, if I gave everything I have to the poor, and even sacrificed my body, and some Bibles, some translations say to the flames, where he gives himself up to be burned to death at the stake, to become a martyr. I could boast about it. But if I did it and I didn't love other people, I would have gained nothing. Isn't that good news? You can go die for your cause. You can give everything you have and make somebody else's life better. And if you don't love them, if you don't do it out of love, you get nothing out of it. You don't even get an attaboy from God. God wants you to love people. And this is why love is self-sacrificing. This is why love is above other things. We start at verse 4 with some of the most famous words in the history of mankind. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love is not jealous or boastful or proud or rude. Let me say that again for the teenagers in the room. Love is not jealous. It's not boastful. It's not proud. It's not rude. So those of you that have little relationships or whatever, and the other person treats you like dirt, and you're just like, oh, she's so cute. I got a girlfriend. but they are jealous of everybody you meet, or they're rude to you, that's not love.
Right.
It does not demand its own way. It is not irritable, and it keeps no record of being wrong. So love is not a woman.
Absolutely.
Because if you look at your significant other, they can tell you everything you've ever done wrong, and this one just got added to my list.
Uh-uh.
Love doesn't keep track of wrongs. Because if you love somebody and they love you, they forgive you when you mess up. Didn't say if you mess up, I said when you mess up. Every single one of us messes up. Every single one of us does the wrong thing at some point. Is that right?
Yeah.
And if we truly forgive somebody, we put it in our past and we forget about it, or do our dead level best to do it, because love does not keep a record of wrongs. It is not irritable. And it keeps no record of being wronged. It does not demand its own way. You guys know what it means to demand your own way?
Yep.
Somebody's been around toddlers, haven't they? Do kids want it their own way? They want a Burger King kind of life, don't they?
Oh, yeah. I still do.
A lot of adults I know want a Burger King kind of life. They want it their way, and when do they want it?
Now.
Now. We're all guilty of that. Love does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Love never gives up. It never loses faith. It is always hopeful and endures through every single circumstance. Did you get that? Love isn't a fleeting thing. It's an enduring thing. Love doesn't just stop one day because we decide, oh, well, it's been a good run. It's over now. Love stops when we decide that it's not going to make it any farther. It stops when we choose to put ourselves ahead of someone else. It stops when we go through the opposite of what this says love is. Prophecy and speaking in unknown languages and special knowledge will become useless. Because someday we're all going to be in heaven and there isn't going to be any more secrets. There isn't going to be any unknown languages. There's not going to be any more pain or suffering or strife or anything like that. But what there will be, folks, is love. Love will last forever. Now, our knowledge is partial. We all have some knowledge. We all know some things. Whether it's, if I cry, I get fed. That's something the babies know very well. Sometimes adults know that too. If they cry, they get fed.
Right.
But our knowledge is not complete. It's only partial. And even the gift of prophecy reveals only a part of the whole picture. You ever looked at a picture? I don't remember the name of the show, but they used to do it where they'd only show one part of the picture. And if they could guess what the whole picture was, they'd win a prize, and then they'd start revealing other parts of the pictures until you could see what the whole picture is. Prophecy is just like that. You're only given the specific part that you need to see for this time and this purpose. When Daniel made his great prophecies, he only saw certain things. He didn't see the entire picture. When we're given knowledge from God, we only get to see what we need to see for that time. We don't get to see everything. But when the time of perfection comes, these partial things will become useless. Why are they going to be useless? Because we'll already know what we need to know in heaven. There aren't going to be any more secrets anymore. There's not going to be the unknowns in heaven. And we get to know God fully. When I was a child, I spoke and thought and reasoned as a child. Now that I'm an adult, I only reason like a child. I speak and think like an adult. But when I grew up, I put childish things away. Now we see imperfectly, like puzzling reflections in the mirror. Have you ever tried to use a mirror that was all water spotted and you couldn't see out of it very well? I did that this morning while I was shaving. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I missed more than one spot because I couldn't see the reflection very well. Or have you seen one of those really old mirrors that you can just see black spots on them coming through where the mirroring thing is, and you start to lose the picture, and as it gets older and older, those spots get bigger and bigger, and the reflection becomes smaller and smaller? And then all of a sudden all you see is this black stripe right across where you're supposed to be, or across from the corner to the corner, or something like that, because the mirror has given way. That's what it's like right now as we try and look at God. We can only see certain parts. We can only see small things. But someday we will not have partial knowledge. Someday the reflection will be as clear as an HD TV. It'll be like being there. Oh wait, that's because we will be there. But then, when we get to heaven, we will see everything with perfect clarity. All that I know now is partial and incomplete, but then I will know everything completely, just as God now knows me completely. Do you know yourself very well? I would hope so. But every once in a while, if you're like me, you find something out about yourself that you didn't know. You find out you like something you thought you didn't like. You think about things that are new and different in this part of your life than they were before. God already knows those things are going to happen. He already knows that they did happen. He knows us completely, even if we don't know ourselves completely. 3 things will last forever. Our faith in God, our hope that we place that God is going to do what He says He's going to do, and love. Agape, self-sacrificial love, self-denying love, unconditional. Meaning you don't have to earn it. You don't have to do anything to be loved except be yourself. Those things will last forever. And the greatest of these, of course, is love. Because without love, we can't have hope. Without love, we can't have faith. Even if we don't have love for God, the love that He had for us is the beginning of our faith. And we serve a God who is not only the one who makes our faith possible, He is the one that is perfecting it day by day by day by day. And in those times where our faith is too weak to think that we can go on, love covers over and makes it possible. This morning, as we get ready to wrap up, I just feel like I need to ask, are you allowing God to love you right where you're at? Are you allowing Him to take away the things out of your life that don't belong? Are you letting Him love you fully and completely today? Or have you put up barriers between yourself and God, saying this part of my life is mine, nobody else's, and I'm not going to let it go for anything? Because I'll say this, if we put up those barriers, if we protect parts of ourselves from even God, we cannot have the full faith. We cannot have the full portion of the Holy Spirit that He wants to give us. Not because He's unwilling, but because we're not allowing Him into our lives. So this morning, I ask that you seek your own heart. Maybe find something new about yourself that you didn't know. And allow God to take away those barriers.